All right, let's jump right in. We're talking about molecules that are in every single living cell, nucleotides. And they are, without a doubt, some of the most important molecules in existence. So, why is that? Well, it's because they do two of life's most critical jobs. And these jobs sound like they shouldn't even be possible for the same molecule. On one hand, they're the master blueprint, the complete set of instructions for building an organism. And on the other, they're the universal battery that powers the whole construction project. I mean, that sounds like a total paradox, doesn't it? How can one tiny little thing be both the architect's plan and the power source for the construction crew? It just seems impossible. Well, that's the big question we're going to tackle right now. So, first things first, we've got to unpack this whole dual role thing. We're going to get right down to the nitty-gritty, the actual structure of these molecules, to figure out how in the world they can wear two completely different hats. One as the architect and the other as the power company. So how do they actually pull this off? Well, it all comes down to their surprisingly simple three-part structure. You see, first, you've got a nitrogenous base. You can think of these as the letters of the genetic alphabet, like A, T, C, and G. Then there's a pentose super, which kind of acts as the structural backbone. And third, now this is the real secret sauce, you have the phosphate group. This little guy is the charge, the part that provides the energy and links everything together. Okay, but before you get a fully functional nucleotide, there's this little intermediate step when just the base and the sugar link up. We call that a nucleoside. It's an important part of the process, for sure, but it's not the complete package. It's missing that all-important third piece. And this is where it all comes together. The moment you add that phosphate group, everything changes. It transforms that kind of passive nucleoside into a fully charged, ready-to-go nucleotide. That phosphate is what makes the whole thing spring to life, making it ready for both building the genetic code and for transferring energy. It's the key to everything. Okay, so now that we've got the basic structure down, let's look at that first massive job, assembling the genetic blueprint. So here's the thing. These building blocks don't just snap together randomly. No way. They link up in a really precise directional chain. It always grows in one direction, from what scientists call the 5' end to the 3' end. And you have to understand, this directionality is absolutely fundamental. It's like grammar for the genetic language. It dictates how the information is written, how it's read, and how it's eventually used by the cell. Now, this is where it gets really fascinating. The difference between the building blocks for DNA and RNA is tiny. I mean, look at this. RNA has this little extra bit, a hydroxyl group, on its sugar. DNA doesn't. And that one tiny difference has massive consequences. The absence of that group in DNA makes it incredibly stable, which is perfect, right? You want your master blueprint to last. But that extra little chemical group on RNA makes it more reactive, less stable, which is also perfect for a temporary get-the-job-done kind of message. And this just perfectly sums up their different jobs. Think of it this way. DNA is the master blueprint. It's double-stranded for protection, super stable, and locked away safely in the nucleus. RNA, on the other hand, is the working copy you take to the job site. It's single-stranded, more versatile, and you don't really care if it gets a little beat up, because it's just designed to do a specific, temporary job. So, how does the blueprint actually get used to build something? Well, it follows a process that's basically the core principle of biology. The information that's safely locked away in the DNA gets transcribed or copied into a mobile RNA message. That message then leaves the vault, travels out to the cell's factory floor, and gets translated into the final product, a protein. And it's the proteins that do all the heavy lifting in the cell. But that brings us right back to our original paradox. Because a blueprint is totally useless without the energy to actually build from it, right? You can have the most amazing plans in the world, but without power for the tools, nothing gets built. And this is where the nucleotide's second identity comes storming onto the scene. All right, let's switch hats now and talk about the battery side of things, the universal power pack. How do these exact same molecules fuel literally every single thing a cell does? Okay, say hello to the undisputed superstar of cellular energy, ATP. That stands for adenosine triphosphate. And if you look closely, what is it? It's just a nucleotide. Specifically, it's adenosine, but with 3 phosphate groups tacked on. And the secret to its incredible power, it's all in the bonds holding those last 2 phosphates together. They're like a super tightly coiled spring, just bursting with potential energy. And how it works is it's beautifully simple and unbelievably fast. Anytime a cell needs energy, and I mean for anything, from contracting a muscle to firing a neuron, it just snaps off that final phosphate group. That one little break releases a powerful burst of energy exactly where it's needed, turning the ATP into ADP, which is just the used version of the battery. But believe it or not, the story doesn't even end there. I mean, being the genetic code and the universal battery isn't enough for these guys. They're the ultimate multitaskers, with a whole bunch of other surprising and totally essential jobs inside the cell. For starters, they are major players in our metabolism. You've got these molecules like NAD+ and FAD, which are built from nucleotides, by the way. Think of them as tiny, rechargeable energy taxis. They zip around, pick up high-energy electrons from the food we eat, and then ferry them over to the cell's power plants to make even more ATP. And then you have others, like coenzyme A, which are absolutely crucial for breaking down the fats and carbs from our diet. And on top of that, they're brilliant little managers and messengers. The amount of charged ATP versus used up ADP in a cell acts like a fuel gauge, telling the cell exactly how much energy it has on hand. Then there are other versions, like cyclic AMP, that act like a cellular doorbell. A hormone rings the bell on the outside of the cell, and CAMP sends that message to the inside, kicking off a whole chain of events. So, okay, this is all fascinating molecular stuff, but why does it matter to you in your day-to-day life? Well, because when this incredibly elegant, but also very complex, system breaks down, the consequences for our health can be really serious. Let me give you a couple of real-world examples. Gout, which is this really painful type of arthritis, is basically what happens when the cell's nucleotide recycling system gets overloaded. You end up with this buildup of sharp crystals in your joints. But we can also use this knowledge to our advantage. Think about cancer cells or viruses. They need a massive supply of nucleotides to replicate like crazy. So a lot of anti-cancer and antiviral drugs are designed to do one simple thing: cut off their nucleotide supply. It basically starves them of the building blocks they need to multiply. So let's bring this all back home. We started with what seemed like a paradox, right? How can one molecule be both the blueprint and the battery? And now we see the answer. It's all in its brilliant two-phase structure. The sequence of the bases, the A's, T's, C's, and G's, that's the information. And those spring-loaded phosphate bonds, that's the power. It's just such a truly elegant system when you think about it. From the double helix that writes out our very identity to the tiny ATP molecule that powers our every single move, it all comes down to these fundamental three-part molecules. They really are the indispensable and elegant foundation of all life as we know it.